Courtship. One of the most confusing and intricate assets of human communication, and yet everyone already has their hot take on it.
And we'll go to space station. You have little hands.
But truly dissecting it is practically impossible at this point because of all of the moving parts that exist within it and how complicated they are. It's almost like as if it is the most complicated and difficult roguelike video game ever known to man. Simply put, due to all the similarities between roguelikes and dating, there's a lot we can learn from the fairly niche video game genre about how to court those sassy lasses. If you didn't already watch part 1 of this video, I recommend doing that now. But if you need a quick recap, we covered the RPG elements of both roguelikes and dating, as well as the procedurally generated environments of meeting a girl and texting one. So, we will start there. So, if you recall, my friends, you have now made it through the second floor, also known as texting, successfully. You beat the boss and you got her out on a first date. Or maybe you skipped the second floor entirely and asked her out when you first met her. But, because we're on a new floor, that means a bunch of new things, such as a new color palette, new enemies, new environmental hazards, and a brand new boss. While other floors might have very significant psychological effects, I believe this one has the most significant modifier. It's like in Risk of Rain, how you can add modifiers to each run that can drastically change on how it goes. While in Risk of Rain, all the modifiers, such as where you can deal extra damage but you take extra damage, or everything explodes upon death that can hurt both you and your enemies, are all optional modifiers. This first date modifier is not optional. This modifier, if it wasn't a roguelike video game, would be as if the entire floor of the dungeon just got pumped full of psychological gas that just makes you confused, anxious, and less confident. But if you want to survive this floor, you must resist and overcome this modifier, otherwise the boss that's going to be coming up will just eat you alive. As I have implied, and to now clarify, with all the other facets of dating, such as texting, meeting the girl, or other dates further down the line, there very much can be a nerve-wracking and tense atmosphere, but I still believe that the first date is the most potent example, simply due to the fact that it has pretenses, and it is the first of what could be potentially many interactions of this sort. And as I mentioned before, you have to overcome this psychological modifier if you want these interactions with this sassy lass to continue. Remember, you are a gentleman of gentlemen. Sorry, ladies, I only know this perspective of dudes when dating. Remember everything that you bring to the table. Remember how unique you are, and that you're a subscriber of the Gentleman Jack's YouTube channel, which, let's be honest, bumps you up 1.5 points. But also keep in mind that she is so lucky to have met someone as unique as you. So, if someone else got that fine-looking fellow I'm looking at right now, she would be devastated. So, what has she got to do? She has to impress you, my friend. That reverse psychology is what actual charisma experts, such as the YouTube channels Charisma on Command and Alpha M, recommend as one of your playing cards, and I would venture to say it even works well in a job interview. While not letting your ego spill over, which is actually one of my flaws in dating, not gonna lie, let that reverse psychology take control of you and influence your actions. This, combined with really healthy habits such as exercise and meditation, will boost your confidence subconsciously. Remember that anxiety gas that filled this floor? Well, by doing these things, you'll be able to resist it and focus on the more important things, such as having a fun time, which, let's be honest, is what gaming and dating are actually all about. And hey, who knows? Maybe once you've enjoyed yourself, your date will enjoy yourself too. Or once you've enjoyed yourself and entered the dungeon, you've riddled your enemy full of bullet holes. Doesn't matter. As long as you can remain calm, regardless of the psychological modifiers, your chances of success will skyrocket. So now that we've taken care of the psychological effects of this floor, let's instead talk about the potential loot and the boss of this floor, which the first date is actually the first place you can start to get rewarded for your efforts. Now, as always, keep in mind all the procedurally generated events that can occur while you're in this dating dungeon trying to get treasure or trying to get affection from that sassy lass. Now, getting loot in a roguelike is a lot easier than getting loot and dating, because really all it involves is you just walking into a room and opening up a chest, maybe after you've killed some enemies or encountered some hazards or something else. It's pretty simplistic. In dating, however, it's not that simple. You can make it past all the social blunders, all the awkward pauses, and the fact that you look like her ex. This actually happened to me once. But even if you dodge all of those things, things can still go wrong. See, the thing about dating is your chances to give and receive affection with things like touching or giving compliments come up constantly, nearly constantly actually. But if you do one of those instances wrong and you react poorly, it can ruin what would otherwise be a great date. The equivalent in a roguelike would be as if there are tons of invisible floating chests in a room, but all of them have puzzle locks, and if you do that puzzle wrong, or the puzzle just doesn't feel like working, you'll explode. You also have to keep in mind how many chests you open. Open too few, and you're probably going to end up in the friend zone, also known as permadeath. Open too many, and you're going to probably get a restraining order, also known as social death. But one thing to keep in mind, if she's totally content with you opening up every chest in her dating dungeon, I'm gonna be real with you, homie, she's not the one you want, because she's been explored by every single adventurer very openly. Listen, gamers, as someone who's a junior in college, I'm just gonna tell you that particular type of sassy lasses, while they might seem really, really sassy, they're not the ones you want, because they're not going to cherish and love you. Which, if we look at the core of our masculine beating hearts, that's all we really want in life, is a cute looking girl with a nice personality who loves us. But we'll get into the ultimate reward of the dating dungeon a little bit later. Anyways, because it's still the first date, I would recommend limiting the most intense physical interaction with the girl being a quick kiss only if she wants it and it's clear that she wants it and things are going well. Regardless, now that we've covered loot, I want to talk about the third floor boss, also known as securing the second date. You see, securing the second date is very different from securing the first. Now, if you want to know how to secure the first, obviously you need to make sure you check out the first part of this video, but what I'm saying is, they are pretty drastically different. The funny thing is, you probably won't even know if securing this second date or fighting this floor's boss is even an option, because, well, girls just don't tell you. They're just not nearly as straightforward as us guys. Essentially what I'm saying is, you might not even know if you've experienced rejection or permadeath quite yet, but I will give you some tips to essentially try to figure that out. For starters, I almost never initiate conversation after the first date, no matter how well it went. It kind of goes back to the reverse psychology thing. The equivalent in a roguelike would be as if you, instead of trying to find the boss room, you just let the boss come to you. Usually, if she's really into you or she wants that second date, she will initiate that conversation, and you can take it from there. And my friend, if she isn't into you, or she doesn't really initiate that conversation, she probably isn't into you, and chances are, like 99% of the time, you've experienced permadeath. And I'm sorry, man, but you should move on to a different dating dungeon. And don't worry, we will talk about permadeath and all the facets that encompass it later. But let's say she does text you, and you're on top of your texting game, you're texting her back, you're having a great time, and now you might be asking, hey, Jex, how do I ask her out again? Well, actually, that's pretty easy, if I'm being honest. It's probably one of the easiest things here. Remember that we vetted her out by waiting for her to come to us instead of us going to her. So if we think about it, as long as you pretty much take the same steps as you did before, but of course switch up the dating activity, then you're good to go, and you just ask her and you probably will get a second date. By waiting this out and not coming to her and letting her come to you, you prove that you aren't needy or clingy, which is definitely not an attribute you want to come across as having. And, of course, with that being said, it looks like you've beaten this floor and we can move on to the next, so good job! Here's the thing about the next set of floors in this dating dungeon. The second, third, fourth, and so on dates from here on out aren't particularly remarkable, but I'll discuss them as a whole. These floors are more about just keeping what you have, maintaining momentum, and simply going through the flow. This in a roguelike would be as if you made it through the third floor, which was super duper tough, and now you've gone on to the other floors and they're actually a bit more chill, and they almost seem to get progressively easier. However, any misstep still could be fatal, so you have to keep your guard up. This is actually the part of the dating dungeon I usually struggle at, but I'll get into that later. Anyways, somewhere along these floors, you'll actually be able to turn this chick into your girlfriend should the opportunity present itself, which you should actually wait for it to present itself. That would be like in a roguelike if you just kept going through each of the floors and then you encountered a super cool rainbow chest of magic that you got to choose to open. In my experience, I've encountered this opportunity around dates 5 and 6, but I know people who will encounter it sooner and those who will encounter it later. I just recommend you both do whatever you're both comfortable with. But in my opinion, when you finally find this super cool rainbow chest of magic that you can choose to open, and should you choose to open it, the dating dungeon doesn't really end. It more or less transforms into a relationship dungeon, and if you want me to cover that in like some cool video called something like what roguelikes taught me about relationships or something like that, you let me know. But along the way of finding this super cool rainbow chest of magic that we all are seeking, you are going to experience permadeath, and you're going to experience it a lot. So that's going to be the next part of this 2-part video series, and let alone the most important one, and probably where you could take the most out of roguelikes and apply it to your dating life. I'm not gonna lie, this section is going to flipping suck, because I'm gonna be ruffling both some of your feathers and probably some of my own by digging up some unpleasant memories for us here today, my friends. Anyone who's played a roguelike has probably died hundreds of times just trying to get that one perfect run to the end of the dungeon. You know the one I'm talking about, the one where you finally get all the right gear from the right chests, the shop has the right items, and you are able to pound each boss into freaking putty, including the big bad final boss. Well, unfortunately, in order to get that absolutely perfect run, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, no matter who you are. While for confidentiality's sake, I want to respect the involvement of anyone who's ever dated me in my life, so I won't list how many actual successful runs I've had, nor will I list who with, but I will tell you all of the dozens upon dozens of failed ones I've had in the past. Of course, I've also died dozens of times in Enter the Gungeon, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Risk of Rain, and Slay the Spire, each respectively. So, you know, there is some mutual correlation there. Keeping in mind, I've had to start over with every single dungeon in both the video game and dating forms. I'm gonna be real with you, when you get really far in and then you just die for some reason, or you get rejected for some reason, it can be pretty freaking devastating. For example, I've absolutely botched the first floor, also known as the part where you meet girls and get their numbers. So bad, to the point where I had a girl to straight up tell me, "You know," to me when I asked for her phone number. Another example, I've totally botched the texting portion, also known as the second floor of the dating dungeon, where either I've asked her on a date too soon without building enough comfort or trust, or maybe the fact that I just wanted to take her out at all caused her to ghost me. So, that happened. And while I actually tend to do pretty okay on the first date after a lot of trial and error, I've noticed that I tend to overshare, boast too much, or even simply just talk too much on later dates simply because I let my guard down. And that's kind of what I was referring to earlier, actually. All of these dating permadeaths I've experienced aren't exactly fun to think about. In fact, it's rather humiliating looking back on it and thinking about it. You know, it's stuff that keeps you up at night. And I know, and I understand that I'm putting myself actually in a pretty vulnerable position by expressing those things on the internet. To be entirely honest, I'd honestly rather have you guys know me as the guy who's had a perfect run every single freaking time, who's always gotten the girl, always had the perfect RPG stats, dealt with every procedurally generated environment perfectly, and all of those hazards and events, and never ever got rejected. But that's just not reality. It's not reality for any of us. But not to keep ourselves down in the dumps here, I'm bringing this stuff up to show examples of what you can learn from these kind of humiliating mistakes that you can make in dating dungeons. First, when referring to the girl that was like, "You know," I still laugh about thinking about that. When I asked for her number, I looked back and realized that not only was my hair messy as crap, but I probably wasn't very well groomed. So you know what I did? I started working on my hair, and I started working on my grooming and making sure I was always in tip-top shape. Second, when referring to how to avoid getting ghosted, well, it's impossible for any of these rejections to be 100% siphoned out. Through trial and error, I've kind of learned how to gauge different girls and identify when it's okay to ask them out, when they feel comfortable, and when I should probably just dip tail and find a different one. And finally, as I mentioned, I feel like I can pull off a first date pretty decently well, but with everything else later on in that case, I just basically just need to make sure I never let my guard down, and that I shut up more often than I talk. By looking at these situations introspectively and being able to say, hey, what did I do wrong? Not her, but yourself. What did you do wrong? Or what did I do wrong? You can take these situations and turn them into ways to improve your own charisma. When getting better at a roguelike or at dating, if you simply blame the game or the girl for your mistakes, or for results that didn't go quite as you wanted it, you create an external locus of control, and that simply negates any improvement that you might be able to come up with. Taking an internal locus of control, I'm gonna warn you, is gonna be extremely painful, because it forces you to look at the undesirable facets of yourself, and it forces you to address them, but it will significantly improve your results if you address those problems and do your best to take care of them. As painful as those permadeaths are, if you combine consistent introspection with consistent commitment to improve yourself, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, what kind of person you are, your chances will constantly improve. In roguelikes and dating, the reality is, if you keep showing up to the barbershop, you'll eventually get your hair cut. No matter how hard it gets, how many times you get so far, and then you die or get rejected in the video game or in dating respectively for some stupid reason, if you keep rolling the dice, you will eventually get a 7. It's a numbers game, gentlemen. You just simply have to play it enough. So pick up your head, you classy Chad, and just give it another try. Dating is simply no different. Finally beating every single boss and making it through alive is extremely difficult, but if you keep in mind how to top off all of your RPG stats, how to handle the unexpected procedurally generated events and environments, and how to get up and try again even after every ridiculous relationship, permadeath, or rejection, you can finally find that super cool rainbow chest of magic. While dating is everyone's favorite topic of discussion and everyone thinks they know everything there is to know about it, let's be honest, we all suck at it. Well, let's be honest here though, if you've ever played a roguelike, you've sucked at it too. At least until you finally got that perfect run. What that chest might contain might vary depending on the particular dating dungeon you are in, but for simplicity's sake I will say an official relationship. But always remember, not every relationship is for you, and you should always be willing to turn it down if that sassy lass simply does not meet your standards. Remember, Chads, work hard, never stop improving, and keep your head high. And breathe out. And this video's done. This 2-part video series is done, where I've essentially taught you how to get a girlfriend by using a fairly niche video game genre. As always, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I'm no dating expert, and I'm just a dude behind the camera. But this has been a lot of fun to make. It's taken me so much time. So if you've made it to the end of this, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Gentleman Jax, and I hope to take this channel in this direction, where I start comparing video games to real-life facets in some sort of partially satirical and comedic manner, and just have some stupid fun with it. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, I guess. Share this video with your friends. It really just helped me out, and it is actually really appreciated. So, but you know, if you don't like the video, at least give me a dislike and give me a good roast in the comments. I do appreciate those. Anyways, I've been Gentleman Jax, and I am out.